The massive space station spun slowly against the backdrop of glittering stars. Inside, the Galactic Council's main hall buzzed with activity. Today was important, perhaps the most important day in centuries. Representatives from 50 different alien species had gathered to solve a problem that threatened to start a war. Do-hyun Kim rushed through the curved hallways, trying not to spill his coffee. He was late, and being late to his first major council meeting was not good. His black formal suit had a small wet spot where some coffee had splashed earlier, but he didn't have time to change. "Ambassador Kim, you have exactly 3 minutes to reach the main hall," said a gentle voice from his earpiece. This was Hae-yun, his AI assistant. "And may I remind you that running with hot beverages is not advised in varying gravity zones." Do-hyun slowed down just as he passed through a section where the artificial gravity shifted. His coffee nearly jumped out of its cup, but he caught it just in time. "Thanks for the warning," he muttered, walking more carefully now. The entrance to the main hall loomed ahead. It was a huge door made of something that looked like pearl but wasn't. 2 tall, blue-skinned security guards stood on either side. They looked at Do-hyun's ID badge and nodded him through. Inside, the hall was unlike anything on Earth. The ceiling curved high above, showing a real-time map of the galaxy. The delegates sat in rising circles, like in a giant theater. Some floated in special tanks filled with different gases. Others sat in chairs adjusted for their unique body shapes. The lighting kept changing to help different species see better. Do-hyun spotted his seat, thankfully near one of the doors, and quietly made his way there. He tried not to stare at the Lemurian delegate, who looked like a walking crystal chandelier, or the Nebulon representative, who was basically a swirling purple cloud inside a special container. Now arriving, Earth Representative Do-hyun Kim announced the Council's AI in multiple languages. Several delegates turned to look at him. Some used eye stalks, others used light sensors, and a few used things Do-hyun couldn't even describe. He had just settled into his seat when the council leader, a tall being with silver skin, stood up. "We gather today," the leader said, "to address the conflict between the Lemurian Collective and the Nebulon Alliance. This dispute has gone on for 342 standard years. It threatens the peace of 3 star systems." Do-hyun took a sip of his coffee and opened his datapad. On the screen, Hae-yun had already pulled up the basic facts about both species. The Lemurians were crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns. The Nebulons were gaseous creatures who shared thoughts through density waves. Both were ancient species who had mastered space travel long before humans had invented the wheel. The council leader continued talking, but Do-hyun noticed something odd. Every time the leader mentioned the disputed star system, the Lemurian delegate flashed bright patterns of outrage, while the Nebulon representative swirled in angry patterns. But something about their reactions seemed familiar. "Hae-yun," he whispered to his eye, "could you record and analyze how both species say the star system's name in their native languages?" "Recording now," Hae-yun replied softly, "though I should mention that your coffee is getting cold." Do-hyun smiled slightly. Even as other delegates began making formal speeches about treaties and historical claims, his mind was working on a different approach. Sometimes the biggest problems had the simplest solutions, if you could just find the right way to look at them. He took another sip of his now cold coffee and settled in to watch. This was going to be interesting. The council meeting had been going on for 3 hours. Do-hyun's coffee cup was empty, and his back hurt from sitting so straight. But he kept watching and listening as each side told their story about the disputed star system. The Lemurian delegate stepped forward, its crystal body catching the light. When it spoke, patterns of light danced across its surface, which the council's translation system turned into words. "The star of first light has been sacred to our people for 20,000 years, the Lemurian said. Our oldest records show that our ancestors first gained consciousness there, when the star's rays touched the crystal fields of our original form." Do-hyun noticed how the Lemurian's body glowed brighter with each word. Hye-yun, his AI assistant, was recording everything. The way the Lemurian said the star's name made Do-hyun think of something, but he couldn't quite figure out what yet. Next, the Nebulon representative floated forward in its containment field. Its purple gas form swirled faster as it spoke through density changes in its body. The Great Cloud has been our spiritual center since the first Nebulon thoughts formed in its gases, it said. Our people were born from its stellar winds. We have records of our ancestors dancing in its currents. Do-hyun sat up straighter. There it was again. Something about the way each species named the star system. He typed a quick note on his datapad. The council leader asked both representatives to show images of the disputed star system. 2 holographic displays appeared in the center of the hall. They showed the same star system, but somehow they looked different. The Lemurian's image focused on the way light played through the system's dust clouds, creating beautiful patterns. The Nebulon's image showed how gases moved and mixed in complex ways around the central star. Hye-yun, Do-hyun whispered, are they showing the same star system from different points of view? Yes, Ambassador, Hye-yun replied quietly. The base data is identical, but each species' viewing technology emphasizes different aspects of the system. As both sides continued arguing, Do-hyun learned more about the feud's history. 3 centuries ago, both species had tried to build permanent structures in the star system at the same time. This led to their first conflict. Since then, 14 different alien species had tried to help them solve the problem. None had succeeded. The latest attempt had almost started a war. The Lemurians had begun building a new light-focusing station in the system. The Nebulons said this would disturb the gas flows they used for their ceremonies. Both sides had sent ships. Things had gotten very tense. Do-hyun looked at his notes. Something was becoming clear to him. Something that made him want to laugh, though he kept a serious face. He needed to check one more thing. Hye-yun, can you show me how each species writes the star system's name in their own language? Hye-yun displayed 2 sets of symbols on his datapad. The Lemurian version was a pattern of light and shadow. The Nebulon version was a series of density wave measurements. When spoken, they sounded almost the same. Do-hyun smiled. He knew what he needed to do, but he would need help. He sent a quick message to his friend Sang-Mei Lee, Earth's best xenolinguist, someone who studied alien languages. As the arguments continued around him, Do-hyun began to form a plan. Sometimes the biggest fights started from the smallest misunderstandings. And sometimes, the best way to solve a serious problem was to show people how funny it really was. He just hoped the aliens had a sense of humor. After the main council meeting ended, Do-hyun did something no other diplomat had tried before. Instead of reading old documents or writing new treaties, he invited both the Lemurian and Nebulon representatives to have drinks with him. Of course, since neither species could drink earth beverages, having drinks meant something different for each of them. The Lemurian sat in a chamber filled with pure sunlight, absorbing energy through its crystal surfaces. The Nebulon floated in its container, mixing with special gases that their species enjoyed. Do-hyun sat between them with a fresh cup of coffee, while Hye-yun recorded everything through the room's sensors. Tell me about your favorite memories of the star system, Do-hyun said to the Lemurian. This was not a normal diplomatic question, and the crystal being's surface flickered with surprise. No one has asked us that before, the Lemurian said. Its surface sparkled as it spoke. When I was newly formed, my creator took me there. The light danced through space in ways I had never seen. It spoke to something deep in our crystalline nature. Do-hyun nodded, typing notes on his datapad. Then he turned to the Nebulon representative. And you? What makes this place special to your people? The purple gas cloud swirled thoughtfully. In my early days, the Nebulon said, I joined the great dance of our people there. We moved through the stellar winds, becoming one with the cosmic gases. It was like being part of the universe itself. Do-hyun smiled. Both species were talking about the same place, but they experienced it in completely different ways. It reminded him of an old story from Earth about two groups who fought over the color of something, only to discover they were looking at it from different sides. Later that day, he met with Sang-Mi Lee in the station's Earth quarter. The xenolinguist had been studying the language recordings He-Yun had made. "You're right," Sang-Mi said, pointing to her computer screen. "Look at these sound patterns. When the Lemurians say the star system's name, they're describing what they see, patterns of light. When the Nebulons say it, they're describing gas movements. But in the standard galactic language, they sound almost exactly the same." Do-hyun drank his fifth coffee of the day. "So neither side is wrong about the name," he said. "They're both right. They're just experiencing the same place differently." Do-hyun spent the next day talking more with both species. He sat with the Lemurian delegate in a room designed to look like the disputed star system. The crystalline being's surface sparkled with joy as light patterns danced around them. "You see how the light bends there," the Lemurian said, pointing with a crystal arm. "In our ancient language, that curve of light inspired the name we gave this place. When spoken in the old tongue, it means cradle of light, the place where our consciousness first sparkled into being." Do-hyun watched as He-Yun recorded the exact way the Lemurian pronounced the name. The sound was like soft chimes in the wind, beautiful and delicate. Later, he met with the Nebulon representative in a different simulation room. This time, the room showed the same star system, but focused on its swirling gases and cosmic winds. The purple cloud that was the Nebulon delegate pulsed with excitement as they watched. "Observe the gas flows," the Nebulon said, its form swirling in harmony with the display. "This is why our ancestors named this place Great Gas Cloud of Creation in our primary language. These patterns match the very essence of our being." When the Nebulon spoke the name in its language, it made a sound like wind rushing through caves, yet somehow it was almost identical to the Lemurian's pronunciation. Do-hyun sat back in his chair, finally understanding the whole picture. He turned to He-Yun, who had been recording everything. "Play both pronunciations side by side," he said. He-Yun played the recordings. The Lemurian's chime-like sound and the Nebulon's rushing wind sound were so similar that even the most advanced translation computers had missed the subtle difference. For hundreds of years, everyone had thought they were saying the same thing. "He-Yun," Do-hyun said, "what happened when these names were first translated into standard galactic language?" "Searching historical records," He-Yun replied. "It appears that the first translators assumed both species were referring to the same concept because the pronunciations were so similar. The standard galactic translation database recorded them as the same name." Do-hyun couldn't help laughing. The entire conflict, all the arguments, the near wars, the failed peace talks, everything came down to something so simple. Both species had been right all along. They were just describing different parts of the same beautiful thing. He remembered an old story from Earth about two cities that almost went to war because they both claimed to have invented a special dish. Years later, they discovered that they were actually making two slightly different foods that just happened to have similar names. "Contact Sang-Mi," he said to He-Yun. "Tell her I need her help preparing the translation records, and we'll need examples of similar misunderstandings from Earth's history." As he walked back to his quarters, Do-hyun thought about how often people, and aliens, fought simply because they didn't realize they were looking at the same thing from different angles. Sometimes the biggest problems had the simplest causes, and sometimes the best way to solve them was to help everyone see the funny side. Now he just had to figure out how to explain this to both species without making either one feel foolish. After all, the goal wasn't to embarrass anyone. It was to help them understand each other better. Do-hyun and Sang-Mi worked late into the night in the Earth quarter of the space station. Empty coffee cups littered their desk as they dug through Earth's historical records. They were looking for perfect examples of how humans had solved problems using humor and understanding. "Look at this one," Sang-Mi said, pointing to her screen. 200 years ago, two countries almost started a trade war because they thought they were fighting over the right to name a special kind of bread. It turned out they were making completely different breads that just sounded the same in the global trade language. Do-hyun nodded excitedly. That's exactly what we need. Hey-hyun, add that to our presentation file. And remember that story about the two island nations who argued about who invented a famous dance. Adding both examples, Hey-hyun said, I have also found 17 more cases of translation mistakes that led to amusing diplomatic situations in Earth's history. Sang-mi stretched in her chair and looked at the star chart floating above their desk. The disputed star system glowed softly in the hologram, its light and gases moving in beautiful patterns. You know what this reminds me of? She said. It's like that old Earth painting that looks different depending on how you look at it. Some people see a young woman, others see an old lady, but it's the same picture. Do-hyun jumped up from his chair. That's perfect. Hey-hyun, can you create a hologram that shows the star system the way Lemurians see it, then slowly shift it to show how Nebulans see it? Creating visualization now, Hey-hyun replied. Above their desk, the hologram changed. First, it showed brilliant patterns of light dancing through space. Then, slowly, the same image shifted to show swirling gases and cosmic winds. It was the same view, just focused on different parts. We need to show them this, Do-hyun said. But we also need to help them understand why it's funny. Humans learned long ago that laughing at our mistakes helps us grow past them. Sang-mi typed quickly on her datapad. I'm adjusting the translation matrix. When we present this, both species will be able to hear how their names for the star system sound in each other's languages. They'll understand that they've been saying almost the same thing all along, just with tiny differences that got lost in translation. Do-hyun walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow, he would stand in front of the Galactic Council and try something no other diplomat had ever tried. He would show two ancient species how a simple translation error had caused centuries of arguments, and he would do it by making them laugh. Do you think it will work? Sang-mi asked, joining him at the window. Will they understand the humor? They're intelligent beings, Do-hyun said, and in all my talks with them, I've noticed something. The Lemurians' light patterns sometimes flicker in ways that remind me of laughter. And the Nebulans' gas forms sometimes swirl in patterns that look like they're chuckling. They can understand humor. They just need someone to show them when something is funny. Hey-hyun's voice came from the room's speakers. Final presentation is ready for review. Ambassador, would you like to practice one more time? Do-hyun turned back to the desk. Yes, he said. Let's make sure we get this exactly right. Tomorrow, we're either going to make history or we're going to become a funny story ourselves. The main council chamber was completely full. Word had spread that the human diplomat had discovered something important about the ancient feud. Species from all over the galaxy had come to watch. Do-hyun stood in the center of the room, with Hey-hyun managing the presentation controls and Sang-mi ready to help with translations. Honored members of the council, Do-hyun began. I want to tell you a story about my own people. Long ago on Earth, two large cities almost went to war over a special food. Each city claimed they had invented it. They argued for years, but one day, someone realized something funny. They were actually talking about two different foods that just happened to have similar names. The room was silent. The Lemurian delegate's crystal surface flickered with interest, while the Nebulan representative's gas form swirled slowly, paying close attention. Now watch this, Do-hyun said. Above him, a hologram appeared showing the disputed star system. This is how the Lemurians see their sacred place. The image showed beautiful patterns of light dancing through space. They named it in their language, and the name means cradle of light. Hey-hyun played the recording of the Lemurian name, its chime-like sound filling the chamber. The Lemurian delegate's surface sparkled in recognition. And this, Du Hyun continued as the hologram shifted, is how the Nebulans see the same place. Now the image showed amazing swirls of cosmic gases. In their language, they named it Great Gas Cloud of Creation. The recording of the Nebulan name played, its rushing wind sound almost identical to the Lemurian version. The Nebulan representative pulsed with recognition. "Listen to those names again," Du Hyun said. "They sound almost exactly the same, don't they? So similar that the first translators thought they meant the same thing. But they don't. They're different names for different parts of the same beautiful place." He pressed a button, and the hologram split into two. One side showed how Lemurians saw the star system. The other showed how Nebulans saw it. Then, slowly, the images merged, showing how both views were equally true. "Both of you have been right all along," Du Hyun said softly. "You've been fighting because you thought the other side was wrong about the name. But you were both right. You were just seeing different parts of the same amazing thing." The chamber was completely quiet. Du Hyun took a deep breath and played his final card. "On Earth, when we discover mistakes like this, we learn to laugh at them. Not to make fun of anyone, but to celebrate how wonderful it is that different people can see different kinds of beauty in the same thing." He showed more examples from Earth's history, more funny misunderstandings that were solved when people learned to laugh at the situation instead of getting angry. With each example, the tension in the room got lighter. At first, the council chamber stayed completely quiet after Du Hyun's presentation. The silence felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. Du Hyun looked at the Lemurian delegate, whose crystal surface had gone very still. The Nebulan representative's gas form had stopped swirling. Even Sang-mi held her breath. Then something amazing happened. The Lemurian surface began to flicker in an unusual pattern. At first, Du Hyun worried that it was angry, but Hae-yun's translation program picked up something different. "Ambassador," Hae-yun whispered in Du Hyun's ear. The Lemurians' light patterns matched their species' expression of amusement. The crystal being was laughing. Its surface sparkled with patterns that danced like sunshine on water. The translation computers struggled to keep up as the Lemurian spoke. All this time, the Lemurian said, its voice chiming with humor, "We thought they were trying to claim the light patterns as their own. We never imagined they were seeing something completely different, something equally beautiful." The Nebulan representative's gas form began to swirl in new ways. The purple cloud twisted and turned in spirals that the translation system identified as their version of laughter. "And we believe they wanted to control the gas flows," the Nebulan said, its voice rushing like a gentle wind. "We never understood that they were celebrating another aspect of the same sacred place." Other council members began to react. Some flickered, others hummed, and a few made sounds that their own species used for laughter. The whole chamber filled with the sounds and sights of different kinds of alien amusement. Du Hyun smiled as he watched centuries of tension break apart like ice melting in spring. He saw the Lemurian delegate turn to face the Nebulan representative directly. "Would you show us?" the Lemurian asked. "Would you show us how you see the beauty of the gas flows? We have spent so long protecting our view that we never tried to understand yours." The Nebulan's form brightened with pleasure. "Only if you will teach us about the light patterns you cherish. Perhaps together we can see the whole beauty of this place that has meant so much to both our peoples." Sang-mi stepped forward with the latest translation data. "Look at this," she said, displaying a new hologram. "When we combine both species' words for the star system, it creates a new name that means something like place where light and gas dance together." The chamber filled with more sounds of appreciation and amusement. The council leader stood up, silver skin gleaming. "In all my years," the leader said, "I have never seen two species move from conflict to understanding so quickly. Perhaps we have all learned something today about the power of seeing things from different angles and about the gift of being able to laugh at our own mistakes." Du Hyun felt tired but happy. He looked at his empty coffee cup and thought about how sometimes the best solutions came not from serious talks and stern faces, but from the simple human ability to find humor in life's misunderstandings. 1 month after the breakthrough in the council chamber, Do-hyun stood at the same window where he had practiced his presentation with Sang-mi. He watched as ships from both the Lemurian and Nebulon species worked together around the space station, preparing for a joint mission to their shared star system. The construction plans are ready for review, Hae-yun announced. Both species have designed something quite remarkable together. Do-hyun looked at the hologram that appeared before him. The plans showed a new kind of space station that would orbit the disputed star system. One half was designed to study and celebrate the light patterns that the Lemurians loved. The other half would analyze and honor the gas flows that meant so much to the Nebulans. The station would be open to both species, allowing them to learn from each other. Sang-mi walked into the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Do-hyun and smiled at the hologram. "They're calling it the Center for Combined Perspectives," she said. "In both languages, the name sounds almost the same, but this time, they did it on purpose." The door chimed, and their visitors arrived. The Lemurian delegate's crystal surface sparkled with friendly patterns as it entered. The Nebulon representative floated in beside it, its purple gas form swirling peacefully. "We came to thank you again," the Lemurian said, its light patterns creating beautiful shapes on the walls. "Our people have already learned so much from seeing the star system through Nebulon sensors. The gas patterns add a whole new level of beauty to our sacred place." The Nebulon's form rippled with agreement, "And we have gained so much by studying the light patterns through Lemurian crystals. Together, we see more than we ever could alone." Do-hyun sipped his coffee, remembering how close these 2 species had come to war just a month ago. "Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to step back and look at it differently," he said. "Humans learned that lesson many times in our history." "The Council has been talking about your method," the Lemurian said. "They want to know if humans would help with other long-running disputes. Your ability to find humor in serious situations is unique and valuable," the Nebulon added, its gas form making shapes that looked like smiles. "We never knew that laughing at a problem could make it easier to solve. This is perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy." After their visitors left, Sang-mi turned to Do-hyun. "You know what's really funny?" she said. "All those years of diplomatic training, all those serious meetings and formal documents, and in the end, what solved the problem was showing them how to laugh at it." Do-hyun nodded, watching the construction ships work together in space. The ability to laugh at ourselves, to find humor even in our mistakes and misunderstandings, that was something special that humans had brought to the galactic community. It wasn't their technology, or their strength, or their intelligence. It was their ability to step back, see the funny side of things, and help others laugh too. "Hae-yun," he said, "make a note in the diplomatic records. Sometimes the best way to solve an ancient problem is to help everyone see the joke."